Shana Tova, everyone. Oh, you know what I'm going to ask you. We can do better than that. Shana Tova. All right, very nice. Shana Tova. One of my most cherished times of the day is bedtime with my 5-year-old twins, Meir and Gavi. We have a routine. They each get to pick a book to read. Then we get in bed and sing some songs, the last of which is always the Shema. Intermittently, we reflect on the past day and discuss what we are looking forward to tomorrow. I'll never forget a bedtime conversation that we had one night this past summer. Gavi whispered to me, "Daddy, I'm scared." "What are you scared of, sweetheart?" "I'm scared," she said, "that a monster is going to come and hurt me." To which I immediately responded, "Monsters aren't real, Gavi. There are no such things. You don't need to be scared of anything." But then she continued, "What about the germs? I'm scared of the germs." Throughout the pandemic around the kids, Becca and I have often referred to COVID-19 as germs, explaining to them that there are a lot of germs in the world right now. And then Meir chimed in, "Daddy, do you remember what it was like without the germs?" I froze. I held back tears. And rather than give them an answer, I simply said, "It's getting late. Let's sing the Shema." I have regretted not answering Meir and Gavi's questions ever since. In fact, I've been thinking about their fears and their questions for almost 2 months now. I feel that I need to respond. I owe them a better answer. In fact, it's so important to me to get this right that I spent some time talking to an expert, Dr. Rebecca Schrag-Hirschberg, a clinical psychologist who specializes in early childhood social, emotional development, and mental health. With her help, I finally felt ready to respond. So I wrote a letter to my children, and I want to share it with you today, because I think we can all work together to find the language to make sense of our world for our children, for our grandchildren, and for ourselves. Dear Meir and Gavi, first, let me tell you how proud I am of you and how much I love you. Just as my mom always told me, and I tell you each and every night, I love you to the moon and back, and I am so proud of the young kids you have become. Gavi, you said that you are afraid, and naming your feeling is brave. Sometimes parents make mistakes, and I made one when I told you that you don't need to be afraid, that there's nothing to be afraid of. What I should have said, and what I want you to know now, is that your feelings are real. It's okay to be afraid. In fact, there are some things that I'm scared of too. Sometimes I get scared when people are mean and when they don't think of others. Sometimes I get scared when people are sick. I'm worried about the germs too. I'm also worried that some people are feeling really lonely right now. Let me pause the letter here. Friends, there are more things that worry me, things I wanted to share in the letter, but Meir and Gavi are too young, and I don't really know how to say it to them. But let me tell you. I'm worried that we live in a world troubled by natural disasters and climate change, a world plagued by severe racial and economic divides, as well as bitter political strife and baseless hatred. I worry that our children are growing up in a world of terrorist attacks, hate marches, and senseless school shootings. If I could assure Meir and Gavi that they will never be the target of a bully, that they will never bear the brunt of anti-Semitism, I absolutely would. If I could promise them that we will soon return to a sense of normal, emerging out of this pandemic healthy and safe, I would. If I could make this world all that they deserve and more, please know that I would. But I can't, and that breaks my heart. Back to my letter. Meir and Gavi, Rosh Hashanah is a special time when we say we are sorry. So today, please know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that there is so much ugliness in our world. I'm sorry that there are so many people that can't get along and that don't care about one another. I'm sorry there are so many people who make bad choices, choices that are selfish and not kind. I'm also sorry that you have missed, for all that you have missed because of the germs. Precious time with grandparents and other family and friends. I'm sorry for your missed play dates. Meir, I'm sorry you couldn't play baseball with the other kids. And Gavi, I'm sorry you couldn't do dance with your friends. I'm sorry that we haven't gone to your favorite restaurant in 18 months. And I'm sorry that whenever we go to the playground, you have to be worried about when you need to put on your mask. Meir and Gavi, I'm sorry that you gave up so much last year. But I'm also so proud of you for helping to keep us adults safe. And I wish that I could be proud of all adults for wearing masks and getting vaccinated to keep you safe now too. But I can't, because not everyone who could did. And that makes me really sad. And finally, I'm sorry for thinking for so long that my job as a parent was to reassure you that everything is okay. No, my job is to help you sit with your feelings and understand that feelings themselves aren't scary. We are having a lot of big emotions right now. Your feelings are real. You told me that you are feeling scared, and I get that because I am too. We are living in a time, you see, when a lot of people are afraid. It doesn't matter if they're little like you or big like me. We all get scared. But it's okay to be afraid. Don't run away from the feeling. It's telling you something important about what's happening around you and inside you. But please know that I'm always here with you when you have feelings, whatever they are, even if they are scary. I also want you to know, Meir and Gavi, that there is a lot of good in this world. There are a lot of grown-ups in charge who are trying to make the world less scary. Like a very important person in my life, Mr. Rogers, taught me, we should always look for the helpers. There are many people that want to help us, that want to help you. Mommy and I always try to be helpers, and we know that you will be helpers too, helping people feel safe and a little less scared by being kind and loving. In so many ways, Meir and Gavi, it has been a tough year. We thought the germs were finally going away, but they didn't. People are still getting sick. And today, I'm thinking about a book written by Judith Viorst called Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. It tells the story of a little boy named Alexander who had a really bad day. For him, it feels like the worst day ever. Nothing goes right, and it makes him both really mad and really sad. So sad that he announces that he wants to run far away to Australia, leaving his bad day behind. But the book ends with these words: "It has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day." My mom says that some days are like that, even in Australia. It's surprising that the book ends this way. Shouldn't the author have written that Alexander woke up the next morning and it was a beautiful, awesome, great new day? No. The message of the book is really important. It tells us that we will have bad days. And while we hope that tomorrow will be better, there's no guarantee. But here's the most important part. We will get through the bad days. We will get through them together. How do we get through them? Meir and Gavi, it's a 4-letter word. H-O-P-E. Hope. Let me pause the letter again here, because it was here that I paused in my writing to think about hope. Hope is much deeper than they all lived happily ever after. To hope is to conceive of things turning out differently, to believe in the possibility of a positive outcome, often in the absence of any evidence. Hope sometimes seems like an irrational emotion, a chutzpahdik impulse that others may say is ill-advised or even naive. There's not always a scientific or historical reason to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. In fact, things sometimes do get worse before they get better, a reality that we can certainly understand now in the midst of both the pandemic and the political and social unrest in our country. Having hope requires that we take the long view. To be clear, having hope does not mean denying our current existence, but rather defying it. Hope forces us to squarely face the facts of life and then to see something beyond them. Living with hope means both dwelling in the world that is and at the same time aspiring to the world as it might yet be. Tikvah, the Hebrew word for hope, originates in a story from the book of Joshua. A Canaanite woman named Rachav courageously protects 2 Israeli scouts from Canaanite attack. As a reward, the scouts promise that when the Israelite army invades Canaan, they will return the favor, and Rachav and her family will be protected. In order to protect her, they offer her a scarlet tikvah, a scarlet thread, to hang from her window. This thread becomes Rachav's only guarantee that her household will be spared by the Israelites. It was literally her tikvah, her only hope. Hope is that thread that we continue to hold on to during the darkest moments in our lives and in our world. It's the common thread that we as a Jewish people hold on to ever so tightly when nothing is guaranteed. The Jewish people have held on to hope since the beginning of time. Somehow, from deep within, we have held on tight and found the courage to get up and move forward. We continue to have hope because that is what Jews do. Our national anthem, Hatikva, celebrates the realization of one of our greatest hopes, the state of Israel. And it also represents the hope that we continue to have in our hearts. Some days are more difficult than others. Some days are simply terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days. And yet our tradition teaches that even in the most challenging of times, we must hold tight to tikvah, hope, even if it feels like it's dangling by a thread. Perhaps this is why we add Psalm 27 to our daily prayers from the beginning of the month of Elul all the way through the holiday of Sukkot. Psalm 27 begins by expressing our fears and concerns, and then it ends with the words, Kaveh el Adonai, place your hope in God. kaveh. There's that word tikva again. The psalm moves us from fear to hope, mirroring the journey of these high holy days. Tikva. Our job is to hold on to hope, because that is what we have always done. In fact, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, the former chief rabbi of the UK, went even further, asserting that in a sense, quote, the Jews invented hope. And then he continued, the Greeks gave the world the concept of tragedy. Jews gave it the idea of hope. To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in the world. Back to my letter. Meir and Gavi, do you remember learning about the moon last year in school? Do you remember how excited you were to teach Mommy and me all that you had learned about the moon and its cycles? I love the moon too. It's a symbol of hope in the darkest of times. And we Jews are moon people. In this way, it makes sense that the Jewish calendar is based on the cycle of the moon. But there's a problem with seeing the moon as a symbol of hope. The moon is not always visible. Sometimes it's only partly visible. And in the case of the beginning of each Hebrew month, we see no moon at all. Again, I pause my letter and ask you, did you know that today, Rosh Hashanah, is the only Jewish holiday that occurs on Rosh Chodesh, the new moon? Tonight, there will be no moon to see in the sky. Rosh Hashanah is literally our darkest Jewish holiday. And yet, to begin the holiday in the evening, we proclaimed in our prayers the last two nights, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, b'kaseh liyom chagenu. Blow the shofar when the moon is covered. When the moon is covered, when we cannot even see a little sliver of light, yet we are commanded to blast the shofar, a symbol of hope. Hope, even in the darkest of times. Together, the shofar and the moon help to remind us of an important lesson. Even when no light is visible at all, even in the deepest darkness, our hearts trust and remember that the light will shine once again, maybe even tomorrow. And though it seems impossible to imagine today, the light will eventually reemerge in its fullness. So back to the letter. Meir and Gavi, the moon teaches us to hold on to hope. But there are still so many challenges in our world. There's so much in our world that can break our hearts. I wish I could protect you from getting your hearts broken, but that's not the way the world works. And then I stopped writing the letter. I knew I couldn't end the letter on that note, but I couldn't seem to find the right words. So I returned to thinking about Rosh Hashanah, and in particular the liturgy. Maybe a prayer would help me find the words for the letter. One of the main prayers of today, which we will recite as part of the Musaf service, is the Untitled Chapter. In the Untitled Chapter, we conclude that terrible things will happen in life. We will have some terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days, and sometimes even worse. There is much in life that is out of our control, but there is also much that we can control. The Untitled Chapter tells us to focus on three essential words: tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah. Tshuva means turning. It is recognizing that we can grow, we can change, we can inspire. Sure, life is happening all around us and to us, but we can still be agents of change. We don't have to accept the world as it is with all of its flaws. Tefillah refers to our capacity for prayer, our capacity to open our hearts, our capacity to be open to a relationship with God. There's so much that's out of our control. But do you know what we can control? We can control how many times we say, I love you. We can control how many times we say thank you each day. Tefillah means living with love and gratitude. And finally, tzedakah means being generous with our time, our energy, our pockets, and our hearts. What we can control is how we respond to the events around us. When our hearts break after an anti-Semitic incident, we educate and organize. When a building collapses tragically in Florida or homes burn down in California, we donate. When we realize that the pandemic is not over and we must protect not only ourselves but others, we get vaccinated and we keep wearing masks. When we see that someone is depressed or afraid, we reach out and tell them that they are not alone. Tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah. The Untitled Chapter is not telling us what will keep us safe, but rather how we should respond as Jews. The Jewish response is to do tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah. For when we do so, we demonstrate both the resilience that Rabbi Peltz talked about yesterday, and we hold strong to hope. We become the hope, and we live with hope in our hearts. I was beginning to find the words to end my letter. And then I found a sermon written by a colleague of mine, Rabbi Sharon Brous, the rabbi of Ikar in Los Angeles. In the sermon, she tells a story about her friend, Reverend Otis Moss. She explains that years ago, he and his church were under attack. They were receiving hundreds of hate-filled threats every week. Reverend Moss was a new preacher, a young father, and the stress was acute. Listen to what he wrote. One night, I was half asleep and heard a noise in the house. My wife, Monica, punched me and said, "You better go check that out." So I did. Like a good preacher, I grabbed my rod and staff to comfort me. I went walking through the house with my rod and staff that was made in Louisville with the name Slugger on it. I looked downstairs and then I heard the noise again. I peeked in my daughter's room, and there was my daughter, Michaela, dancing in the darkness, just spinning around and saying, "Look at me, Daddy." I said, "Michaela, you need to go to bed. It's 3 a.m. You need to go to bed." But she said, "No, look at me, Daddy. Look at me." And she was spinning, her pigtails going back and forth. I was getting huffy and puffy, wanting her to go to bed. But then God spoke to me. "Look at your daughter. She's dancing in the dark. The darkness is all around her, but it's not in her." Reverend Moss concluded with these words. "Michaela reminded me that weeping may endure for a night, but if you dance long enough, joy will come in the morning." It is the job of preachers and clergy to send this word to us in the hardest of times. Do not let the darkness find its way in you. Friends, do not let the darkness find its way in you. Hope doesn't mean that everything is okay. Not everything is okay today. But hope means believing that there will be a tomorrow. That if we dance long enough, joy will come in the morning. Despite all of our struggles and shortcomings, all of the things that have made us feel scared, sad, or alone this past year, we can't let darkness find its way inside of us. We must hold on to hope. What gives you hope? I find hope in the love of family and friends. I find hope in the resilience of our TBS community. I find hope in our frontline workers, healthcare professionals, teachers, supermarket cashiers, and the like, who have taught us that not all heroes wear capes. I find hope in those fighting for equal rights, justice, and dignity for all people. I find hope in the Torah, in our liturgy, and in our tradition. I find hope both in God and in science. I find hope in those who continue to put their best foot forward every day, who strive to bring more godliness into our world, who simply continue to dance. If you dance long enough, joy will come in the morning. I now knew how I wanted to end the letter. So back to the letter one last time. Meir and Gavi, during this pandemic, with lots of extra time together at home, we have had more spontaneous dance parties than I can count. I have the words, "Alexa, play Disney music," seared in my mind. But what I have not told you before, I guess because I didn't even fully realize it until now, is that each of those dance parties were so much more. They were also hope parties. Because the greatest hope that I find in the world is the two of you. You give me hope when you smile, when you laugh, and when you fall down but then get up again. You give me hope when you comfort, when you hug, kiss, and love. You give me hope when you realize that you too can be heroes in our world, not by being the smartest or the wealthiest or the best, but simply by being you and by letting your heart do the talking. You give me so much hope each and every day. But Meir and Gavi, I need to tell you a secret. I'm guessing you already know this since you are well on your way to being superheroes. The secret is, I'm not just writing this letter to you today. I'm writing, and now I'm talking, to all children. Children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and students. They are our hope. Hope for the future, and also hope for our present. One more secret. Walt Disney once said, "Adults are only kids grown up." Today, this letter I am writing to you is for everybody. It's for all of you. Meir and Gavi, It may have taken a couple of months, but I hope I have now answered your questions more appropriately. I hope you will keep this letter and you'll read it whenever you are feeling afraid. And I hope it will help you feel better. I hope when you read this letter today and in the future, it will help you to understand that while we can't make our fears go away, we can be there for each other. We can help each other through difficult times. And we can help each other live with hope through our presence, our support, our love, and our many, many spontaneous dance parties. Thank you for being my source of hope each and every day. May you always hold tight to hope, and may you always strive to be the source of hope for others. And then I ended my letter by writing, I love you with all my heart. Love, Daddy. I truly hope that my kids will keep the letter. But what I want to say to all of you, all of the kids grown up, both in the sanctuary and those joining us on live stream this morning, is the following. Each and every one of you, through your kindness, your presence, and your love, brings me hope. And for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I also ask, can you find hope today? Can you find hope in the love of family and friends? Can you find hope in our children? Can you find hope in God? Can you find hope even in those you disagree with? Most of all, can you find hope in yourselves? There will be days that will be terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days. But what about tomorrow? If you dance long enough, joy will come in the morning. Yes, hope may feel sometimes like it's hanging from a thread, but not when it lives in our hearts. May hope always live in our hearts. Friends, as you leave today, I want to invite you to take a card that we made for each of you. It's a card that invites you to reflect on your hopes for the year 5782. If you're here in the sanctuary, please pick up a card before leaving the building. And for those at home, you can find the card on our High Holiday TBS Connects site, the website you are using to join us for services today. Just scroll down on the website. I hope you will download the card and print it out. And when it gets dark tonight and the holiday ends, even though there will be no moon to be found in the sky, I want to invite everyone to write about what gives you hope. What is your hope for yourself and for your loved ones in this new year of 5782? What is the hope that lives in your heart? I would love to hear what you write. Perhaps we can set up a time in the coming weeks to sit in our TBS tent in the parking lot and discuss over a cup of coffee what you wrote. But either way, anytime you are having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day this year, take out the card and read it. Keep it in your pocket or on your desk or in your siddur and use it to remind yourself of your tikvah, your hope. Write about hope tonight as you search for the moon. And as you do so, know that I will be tucking Meir and Gavi into bed and will be telling them what my mother has told me every day of my life. I love you to the moon and back. Shana Tova.